Never have I ever changed my pricing model during a sales call. Have you ever done that?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. Many times.
Oh yeah, that's $500. Oh wait, no, for you $300.
Here's the thing: you do not validate a business without doing that.
Yeah, I know.
You just don't do it.
Yeah.
You change your pricing constantly. In the
Some of my best ones are, that's $3,000 a year, but if you want to break into 12 monthly payments, it's only $300 a month. Well, I'll take the $300 a month. I just made $3,600.
Yeah. Okay. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Startup Ignition podcast. We are your hosts, Tyler and John Richards. You know us by now. We're the old news. But today we have a very exciting guest, Shane Murphy, and he is with a company and a startup called Boostly that just recently announced some exciting news. And last minute, we asked Shane to come on the podcast, and he was gracious enough to come here on probably a pretty crazy week for you with all the interviews and people wanting to talk to you. But a little background on Shane, just to introduce him. He is the CEO and co-founder of Boostly. Shane's journey is obviously a special one for us because he has come through the Startup Ignition Bootcamp. We love seeing our alumni going on to bigger, better, awesome things. Boostly is a startup, and it is leading the charge in SMS marketing for restaurants, and they just announced a $22 million Series A this week.
That's a $22 million round, not the valuation.
Oh no, yeah, that's check. That is check. That is the check. That is an awesome check, and that's no small feat. You know, and in this challenging startup environment and VC environment that we're in today, since 2021's high, right? We've kind of been in this trough, so that's amazing. So kudos to Shane. But yeah, you also took Boostly through YC, Y Combinator. Obviously adding to your impressive track record. And Shane is not only a proven founder, but with extensive sales expertise, because when we met you, you were very deep into the thorough and the troughs of salesmanship, right?
Yep, absolutely.
But he's all around just a great guy. So everybody welcome Shane to the podcast. We're excited to have him. But before we get into it, and I know you're itching to talk about backgrounds and kind of go down memory lane a little bit with Shane, we like to do a thing called what we call the Startup Ignition icebreaker with our guests and even with ourselves. And we like to play just a fun, easy, get into the podcast mode ice-breaking game. So you ready?
Right on. Let's do it.
Here we go. So I'm going to lead this section, okay? And it's going to play off the game of Never Have I Ever. I know it's a drinking game. We're not going to be drinking today. But
founder stories get a little dicey at times, so I feel like I need to plead the fifth.
Maybe we should have some drinks here on the side, but never have I ever. So I'm just going to lead it. You guys don't have to come up with the never have I evers. I'm not going to put you on the spot. But you two and me, maybe I'll contribute as well. I'm going to say something and never have you ever. If you have done it, you raise your hand. If you haven't done it, just keep your hand down. Okay?
Okay.
All right, here we go. Never have I ever made a pitch deck with a typo in it. Have you done it? Raise your hand. If you haven't done it, keep it down.
I'm sure I have.
Oh, for sure.
I'm sure I have.
I must have, but I
corrected it.
Check for that a lot because that's a pet peeve of mine.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think I've pitched with an error.
It's a great lesson as investors. If I see a pitch deck with a obvious glaring grammatical or misspelling typo, that does not say a lot for the
It's a bad look.
Yeah.
It's a bad look.
Yeah.
But I definitely have.
I don't think I've gone into a pitch with those issues, but I've done dry runs and things like internally where
you're just like, oh shoot, I'm glad I saw that.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay, never have I ever agreed to build a feature just to land a big customer. Have you done that?
Yes, I have done that. So I have done that, yes.
Not at Boostly.
I have created a product and a version of our product, not specifically like a software feature, but yes, I have created a product just to land someone who said they wanted X thing, right? I've done that before.
No, in my days at InfoSpace, we had a $200,000 a month customer that wanted a certain something, and we did it.
And you did it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I've removed that sales habit of promising the feature,
Yeah.
I'll say it's coming later.
Yeah. It's coming later. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Never have I ever ghosted an investor after an investor meeting. I haven't.
Ghosted an investor?
Yeah, like you just either the meeting went terrible or you just stopped communication with them. I know this happens a lot, investor to founder, or investors just ghost you. But have you ever ghosted an investor? No. Me neither. Okay. There we go. Here we go. A few more, and then we'll get into the podcast here. Okay. Never have I ever used buzzwords like disruptive, synergy, or paradigm shift in a pitch.
Use those many times.
I have.
Yeah.
I think buzzwords are key to a good pitch, especially right now. AI.
It's better if you're on the cutting edge of using buzzwords than the lagging leader in using buzzwords. You don't want to be 1 year or 2 years behind, but if you're concurrent or you're kind of one of the first ones using it, then it's useful.
Okay, last one. This one's for Shane. Okay, here we go. Last one. Then we'll get into the meat of the podcast. Okay. Never have I ever changed my pricing model during a sales call. Have you ever done that?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. Many times.
Oh yeah, that's $500. Oh wait, no, for you $300.
Here's the thing: you do not validate a business without doing that.
Yeah, I know.
Like you just don't do it.
Yeah.
You change your pricing constantly in the beginning.
Some of my best ones are, that's $3,000 a year, but if you want to break into 12 monthly payments, it's only $300 a month. Oh, I'll take the $300 a month. I just made $3,600.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for playing the game. I just wanted to break the ice. It's a good way to get in the podcast mode, but let's get into the meat of the content here because we have awesome Shane here from Boostly. Okay. Again, going back to the news of this week that broke out, being a boot camp alum, we were so excited to see that. And we texted you right away like, oh my gosh, congratulations. Oh, awesome. Will you come on our podcast? So I'm glad you're here. But I would just want to take a minute and go back into the history now with Shane. And for how long? I don't know. Has it been a decade that we've known you for? I don't know. For me, it's personally
It's not a decade because the boot camp's only a decade old, but he was in an early cohort.
Probably 8 years, I want to say.
It would have been 2017.
17?
2017.
Okay.
It started in 2015.
Yeah.
So
yeah, about 8 years. And I know that we talked even prior to Boostly's creation, right? And even before Boostly was even a thing. But going back to the early days of Startup Ignition, and I just want to discuss your early days experience. Like, where have you been? Give us a little bit of history of Shane.
I'd even like to know, like, you became a real sales leader and one of the top performing salespersons at the company you're at the time you came into the cohort thinking about a new startup, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what led to that? How did you get into sales, and then how did you get the entrepreneurial bug?
And I remember you were I feel like we could say the company name, Jolt. You were at Jolt, and I feel like you had a very high paying, very nice, awesome situation at Jolt.
Weren't you the number one sales producer?
Well, I wasn't an individual contributor. I was running the sales team and on the executive team.
Yeah, but you were key to their revenue generation.
Yeah. And I remember you having like not an internal struggle, but just like, oh man, like, should I leave my job? I don't think it was a question of should I leave my job, but it was like, man, I am leaving a very good situation and job.
Absolutely. I can go back.
How did you get into sales? And then when did you think I'm going to do my own company?
Yeah. So back in 2011.
Yeah.
So maybe to step back even before that. So I originally was going to school as a music major. I was a trombone performance and a jazz studies double major.
I didn't know that.
You can't do anything with either of those careers other than play music and make no money.
Yeah.
And so, but that is, I built my first, I'd say this was building a company. I built a little entertainment booking agency in high school. And my first year in college, I was doing that. Music is all that I knew how to do and all that I thought I would do. And then I ended up going and being a missionary for a couple of years for my church. And I came back and realized I'm not going to keep doing this music thing.
Yeah.
I think sales is what I'm naturally good at. I have interest in that. And so I grew up in Michigan. I ended up coming out to Utah and got my first job in sales, essentially as an SDR, making cold calls for a digital radiology company.
And for our listeners, an SDR is?
Sales development rep. You're making cold calls all day long to set
it's
appointments.
outbound. You're outbound all day.
Yep. And that was my first real exposure to sales. And I realized, hey, I'm good at this.
Yeah.
I was having a lot of success. Then I ended up having a shot to do some level of account executive work, but it was like a year plus sales cycle, multi-million-dollar contracts. And I realized I'm not learning a ton, and I'm not going to learn a ton with this long of a sales cycle. So I went and found this super early stage startup, American Healthcare Lending. There were 6 other people in the room. We were pre-selling a product that didn't exist and that was halfway built, and it was an amazing opportunity to learn and to grow. And so I joined that team and really started cutting my teeth in sales.
Yeah.
And it was a higher velocity sale. I was learning a ton, having a blast.
And it was a startup environment. Yeah.
It was a startup.
Yeah.
And about a year in, I had the chance to buy some equity off of a founder who had left the company.
Mm.
And that is where kind of that entrepreneurial bug really...
The ownership bug.
Yes. It was different. I loved building at that company. And I was always in this role of, if there was a new market or a new type of customer that we're going to go after, I would go and try it out, figure out how do we sell to this and then make it repeatable. And that I really learned how to sell at American Healthcare Lending. I trained my butt off.
I feel like you assumed the founder role. Like that's the founder's job almost, right? Like,
well, we were a couple of years into the business already, and like the founder, Sean Sorensen, he was an absolute mentor to me, still is, and
is that Sean Sorensen? I think we've done business with him.
Yeah.
We're co-invested with him in a company right now.
Yeah,
we just met him about a year ago, and we love the company we're working with him on.
Yeah. So Sean has been one of my mentors, and he really shaped my sales career. He gave me a lot of opportunities to grow and to learn and develop at American Healthcare Lending. And while I was there, I thought, I just want to be a salesperson. I love closing deals. Then there was a moment when I started managing a little bit. I was a really poor manager, but was learning a ton and made this small investment in American Healthcare Lending. And I started really seeing how the business all fit together. That's the beauty of early stage startups, is you get to learn how businesses work.
Yeah.
And you get to see things that you won't see at any other type of business.
Yeah.
And that's when I started realizing, I think I want to be an entrepreneur someday. And so I started taking a bunch of entrepreneurs that I knew and respected to lunch and just asking them, what are the qualities that are going to make me a great entrepreneur?
Yeah.
And started this list of, here's what I need to grow and develop in. And, fast forward a few years, American Healthcare Lending sold and got acquired. And that was my first taste of, I didn't have a ton of equity, but whoa, my bank account is bigger than
it was.
And I got a lump sum. And what does that do for me and my family?
Yeah.
That's a life-changing moment, even having a little bit of influx in cash that all comes up front.
Yeah, yeah.
And we knew at that point, I'm going to be an entrepreneur.
You were done. You were sold. Yeah.
Like, I want this at a massive scale. And at the same time knew I have more to learn. And so...
Is that when you transitioned to Jolt then?
Yeah, about 18 months after the acquisition, I went on to be the head of sales at Jolt. And they were a really, fledgling company. They had a really awesome product market fit, not much of a sales organization. And I was coming on to help them scale sales.
Mm-hmm.
And
for listeners here, because Jolt's had an amazing track record in Utah, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a Utah-based company, tell a little bit about what they did and why you liked it and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, so Jolt does restaurant operations software. Think of digital checklists for employees at restaurants.
Specifically for like franchises almost, right? Or is it for single
Yeah, they
location?
did, SMB restaurants, but a lot in the franchises.
Right.
And their product was incredible, really built from the ground up of solving a true industry need. And when I came on, they were doing probably 50,000 a month in revenue, maybe a little bit less.
Oh, wow.
They were like 30 to 50K in monthly revenue.
So you were pretty early then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they had probably 10 to 15 engineers. They had like 3 salespeople.
Yeah.
And so I came on, and over the next year, we scaled that thing. We went to 5 million in annual revenue. We had, an account executive team of 10. We built out an SDR team of 15 to 20 people. We built customer success from the ground up, and this company was just taking off. And it was such a fun thing to be a part of.
Yeah.
But for me, it was this moment of realizing this is my chance to build without the training wheels of American Healthcare Lending's founders, who were my mentors. And can I replicate what we did at American Healthcare Lending in a new environment with a new product, different market? And can I take what I learned and do it again? And we did. And that was a blast. And I absolutely loved it. And then this is where you guys kind of come into the picture. My wife, she got her MBA at BYU. She's interested in business. I obviously love business, love sales, love startups. And my wife was talking to a friend, and her friend's like, hey, yeah, I know you guys like entrepreneurship. Have you heard of this entrepreneurial boot camp, Startup Ignition? We're like, no, haven't heard of that. So I come home from work one day, and my wife, Catherine, says, hey, Shane, I have an idea. I heard about this thing, Startup Ignition. It sounds pretty cool. What if we go on a weekend date to St. George? And it's a Friday and Saturday, and we just talk entrepreneurship for a weekend.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that sounds like a blast. Like, this is great. Which my wife is so incredible. Like, I feel like that's a rare opportunity where your wife's like, hey, let's go to this startup boot camp together and talk entrepreneurship. It sounds like it'll be fun.
So the Startup Ignition boot camp's a great couples date night.
Yeah,
absolutely. and some of this was, we had been talking for ages of, the goal is I'm going to start a company someday. And so we were like being very intentional about saving money and putting money aside. We were making good money at Jolt. I had a great, successful career in sales, and we were just stocking cash and trying to live like peasants in the meantime, so that when the day came, when the idea lines up with my skill set and the timing would just be perfect to say, hey, let's go start something, and cash isn't a concern. And so we went to, Startup Ignition.
And that was the one and only time we held it in St. George, because the live boot camp is usually held in Lehigh or Provo. We've done it a few times in other areas, but that was the one time in St. George.
Yeah.
But you were from up north more and had to go down south to attend it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that was the one that was happening. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we made it even more of a family affair, because we had a small baby at the time that was like still breastfeeding. And so,
And I remember you guys asked, can you bring the baby?
yeah.
And I said yes, which I usually don't, but I said yes.
Yeah. So we brought my wife's mom and our baby down to St. George.
Yeah.
And you're always jotting down ideas and problems to solve and things. And so I had like some fledgling ideas, and I was like, yeah, I think this could be a company. It was kind of at the stage where you're browsing for domain names just on the side. It's
what
like
works.
It's like this sounds like it would be really, really fun. But at the time, I had no intention of leaving Jolt and starting a company. This was more of, this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
And so we go, and we're going through the Startup Ignition course. And my wife, in between, she says, hey, you've done a lot of these things. Like, you've seen a lot of things that we're talking about. You know things about like the 83B election and how stock works and validating business models. You've like done the validation bit a lot.
Yeah.
And this is great. And so Catherine walked away thinking, oh, I have more confidence that, man, Shane, you could actually start a company, and we're not just going to go bankrupt in the process.
Yeah.
That was probably the biggest realization I remember from that, is that you I think you would, but I think your wife just said, actually,
Go for it.
I believe in Shane as
Yeah.
the founder CEO, and with my support and help, I believe our family could be the founders of a great company. I think that happened that weekend for her.
And
Do you agree?
Yeah.
And I do remember you being pretty meticulous and a good lean startup follower, right? Because like a lot of people that come through the boot camp, they'll listen to it and they'll be like, oh yeah, duh, I need to validate my business. Or, oh yeah, duh, of course I need to talk to my customers. But them actually doing it is a whole nother thing.
I want to
right?
get into that more, but I want to hear after the conclusion of this, because actually I am going to say this, that you are one of the best practitioners of lean startup that I've seen. You know, I've seen a
Well,
great
just to
many.
update Shane, I think this cohort that is coming up next week of the boot camp, I think it's 55 or 56, right? The 56th cohort of Startup
Something
Ignition.
like that, yeah.
Something like that, right?
Yeah.
Over 600 ventures have now gone through the boot camp. So for him to say, hey, you're in the top 1%, you know, that's no small feat. So
And
I
then-
appreciate that.
So yeah, so you went through that and
Yep.
finish up how you felt after that first boot camp.
You know, it's interesting because throughout those 2 days, we got like an hour or two to just do a one-on-one with you, John. And one of my questions was, so I have this idea, I have this really great gig going on, and I'm making a lot of money.
Yeah.
How do you think I should approach this? And you had said, you are in a really good setup. Like, if I were you, I keep doing your thing and like validate this stuff on the side.
Yeah.
But like, hold on to what you got, because you've got a really good thing going.
Did you have equity over at Jolt? Is that why?
We were coming up on a decision to get equity.
Yeah.
And that was,
But he was making, for the time, especially, you know, this is almost 10 years ago, you were making good money.
yeah. I was making great money.
I mean, you were, compared to the pay that was going around Utah at that time, you were making good money.
Yeah.
I was in the top percentiles for sure.
Yeah.
But that was some advice that you had given of like, validate this on the side. And walking away from that was one of the pieces of advice that just didn't jive with me
Yeah.
at the time, where I was pouring everything I had into Jolt, and part of my value system was, if I'm building at Jolt gets every bit of me. It gets me in the evenings and I'm thinking about the business. It gets me during the day when I'm cranking on the business. It gets all of me.
So you could not do that. Like you had to be all in whatever it is you were doing. Yeah.
And at the same time, we had been preparing for that type of an event. It came sooner than we anticipated. But financially, we were trying to prepare for that moment when we could just go all in.
Yeah. Some of the principles there for our listeners just to learn is that, you know, when we talk about doing a startup, there's two major phases. There's the search phase, searching for a viable, sustainable, and profitable business model. And then there's the execution phase where you're actually executing the business. You should not be working for somebody else that expects your business devotion and be in execution mode.
Yep.
But to be in validation mode, the most common way that startups happen in America is somebody's working for somebody else. And because of the knowledge they've gained on a certain vertical industry, they see an insight that leads to an idea for a new company. And they could share it with their current employer, or they said, no, I'm going to leave and start my own company. That's what America's built on.
Yep.
And in many, many ways, that's what America's built on. And that's where you were at. But what you learned was the search phase, search for a business model, the validation, validating a customer that they really have the need or problem you're hypothesizing, and searching for that business model that you can wrap around it to deliver that value to your customer. You can go validate that while you're working for somebody else, going to school, or have other things. But once you find that business model, it's time to go all in.
Yeah, you have to go all in.
So when you learned that, you said, oh, that opens up the opportunity here more.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so essentially, fast forward a couple weeks, and my wife gave me the push. And one night she's like, "Hey, I think
It's time.
you should quit tomorrow
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
and go start a company."
That's rare.
There's right now a lot of guys out there saying, Why can't my wife say that to me? They're going to be very envious.
Well, gosh, I mean, ignorance is bliss. You don't know what you're signing up for at that
but
point.
you don't know how many times I've come across in my mentoring career where the opposite happens, where the man really has a great idea and wants to do it. And it's a business, it's a business marriage, you know, when you take on investors and all that, but your actual marriage is very important. You have to be on the same page.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, you know, there was some discussion surrounding it that evening, and then the next day it was like, okay, I set a meeting with the founders at Jolt and was going to go tell them like, hey, I'm going to go start something. And I remember I was telling them, I'm going to go start something in 4 months. I will hire my replacement. I'll help hand things off. And like, it ended up being like a month in reality, which makes total sense. But, that was the experience. And I'll never forget that morning. I was feeling so nervous. And then I got a text message from another mentor of mine, Ron Suber. He was the president of Prosper Marketplace, who had acquired American Healthcare Lending. And he sent me a random text. It was a picture of a note on his desk. And it was this quote that said something about how the risk makes the journey worth it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this is what I need today. And so I went and told them, and then a month later went on a 2-week vacation with my family. And then we were all in on validating this startup.
So when you quit, you didn't have a validated business model that you knew was going to work. You just literally said, if I am going to get to a validated business model or find something that is going to work that I can create business around, I have to
A footnote to that little mini lesson I gave a second ago was, if you can go all in during the search phase, all the better.
Yeah,
because you'll go faster.
Yeah, it'll
It'll accelerate.
It'll speed it up. Yeah.
And that wholly aligned with my values, where I was not going to be I needed to be all in on something.
Yeah.
And if I wasn't going to be all in on like building at Jolt, I needed to not be at Jolt. And it's best for them to not have somebody who's half in and half out. Yeah. And so
that shows a lot of integrity. Yep.
Yeah.
So I went all in on this idea and
a journey, an entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah. And I mean, fast forward 7 or 8 years, and you know, it's been a period of life where I've grown immensely. I've learned a ton and gained plenty of scars along the way, but we just started validating that thing. And I came home, started cold calling restaurants and setting appointments with this little PowerPoint deck.
Tell them about your first hypothesis for a business model. What were you going to do? So you were in the restaurant industry, so to speak, given a technological software product. What was your idea?
Yeah, so the initial idea was essentially an online ordering marketplace where you had an application where you could order from all the local restaurants and track all of your loyalty points within one app, and the restaurants could, you know, market back to the consumers to get them to order from you more.
Yeah.
And doing it without a commission. Yeah. So like the Grubhubs, the DoorDashes, they all take a high percentage of sales. And I thought, well, we could do this on a subscription model and change the game, which was somewhat what we did at American Healthcare Lending. We were in a highly transactional commission space, and we went in with a subscription product and disrupted the industry that way. Mm-hmm. And I thought we could apply that here in this way. And so that was the initial idea. I started taking that in front of restaurant owners and kept getting some of the same feedback. It was, this is great. How many people do you have on your marketplace that we can market to? 0. It's going to take time to build that up. We need the restaurants to attract the consumers. And then I'd go and be talking to consumers and, well, how many restaurants are on the app? Are these? And it's like, yeah, I have this the classic
marketplace chicken and egg
concept. And I realized this is going to be more expensive than what I want to build this. There's probably a trimmed down version. And so I kept making a few different iterations. I'd change my slide deck after every single meeting I had with an operator, change the idea.
Micro pivoting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we probably went through 3 to 5 different options and then started getting pre-sales. And what it landed on was, this is a direct online ordering solution that you put it on your website, and we are your online ordering system, and we have a couple marketing tools built in.
Yeah.
So there's a referral program to get you more sales and a feedback component.
So if I'm a restaurant, you were saying, if I'm a restaurant, you can come to me, and at the time, I believe it was super hot to start doing online ordering. If you were a restaurant, you could make nice add-on revenue by being able to take an order. And so Grubhub and those were selling that facility to restaurants, but taking like 35% of the ticket or something, right?
So
it's something like that. And you had a better solution.
give me a little bit of a glimpse of timeline here. So from when you left and quit your job to where you are right now, landing on this third or fourth kind of pivoted idea within the beginning days of Boostly, where are we at right now?
So August 1st is when
You quit?
I quit mid-July, and August 1st I started validating.
Okay.
August through, mid-September, I was micro pivoting like crazy and had, I probably had like 5 to 8 pre-sales, where this is part of how I believe validation goes, is
Pre-selling.
if they're not willing to pay for it, then it's not truly validated. And so I was collecting banking information. I was getting commitment. I would give people like a mafia offer where it's too good to be true. And I'll give you, you pay for 1 month and a setup fee, and then you get, the first person was 12 months for free.
Yeah.
And then the second person was 6 months for free because that was too easy.
Yeah.
And then I did like 4 on 6 months for free, and then you get 3 months for free until, and it was all, we won't charge you until we deliver the product.
Yeah.
What's really important to point out here, just again, I love to help our listeners learn the principles you're putting into play, is that only a founder can do what you did. This is why you're not a founder and say, oh, I hope I can find a VP of sales, a white knight that's just a trained salesperson to come in and do this for me. Because you don't want to hire a non-founder to come in and be your head of sales and be flying like that, shooting from the hip. You can't have that happen. That's just not how it works. So what you were doing is what you were actually doing, lean startup, to figure out your market, and you can't do it by proxy. You can't have somebody come in and do it for you. Only a founder can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And at that point, I was like, okay, I think I'm onto something. I one of the assumptions that I had was, there's a really good online ordering product out there called Chow Now.
Yeah.
They have
I remember all the mentoring we did around Chow Now.
Yeah. Chow Now has 10,000 customers. Like it's a great online ordering system. And my question was, will my value proposition cause somebody to switch from Chow Now to my product with the additional features that I've tacked on?
Yeah.
Hey, can and give some context on timing too, about who your tech partner was, or did you have one yet?
I was going to say,
what were you
how
working
does Mikey
on?
come into the picture here?
Yeah, we're coming to that, because at that point,
what were you doing to get anything built or to show customers?
At that point, I was only showing customers PowerPoint slides.
Okay. This is great lean startup, by the way.
Did you mock something up? Or
At one point I created a mock-up in, they're out of business now, but InVision. It was like a prototyping tool.
Yeah.
I made a little prototype of the initial application, and it was bad, like terrible design, like a couple click-throughs, but primarily it was just PowerPoint slides that I cobbled together.
You're saying it's terrible, but I bet you that simple thing helped your customers understand what you're doing, and you got insightful feedback.
Absolutely.
Did you take that to Mikey, and that's how Mikey got involved with
No. This is I'm getting that story. Okay.
Yeah. So before that, on the Chow Now hypothesis, what I did is I went to Chow Now's website. I looked up their testimonials, and there was one of them was in Salt Lake, and so I was like, oh, I'm going to go pitch this person
and see if you can steal him.
and see if I can steal him. And so I call him up, I set up a meeting, I go in person, and I say, hey, you have Chow Now. This is Chow Now plus these things. Chow Now is a better online ordering system, but this has the marketing component. And they're like, where do I sign up? And so I was like, okay, now I really know I'm onto something. And that was probably our 7th pre-sale. And so at that point, I'm like, I need somebody to help me build this.
Yeah.
I'm not technical. And so I started hunting for a co-founder. And I was going to all of the local meetups where engineers were at. I'd hop in, I'd get there a little bit early, grab the mic at the front and be like, hey, this is me. This is what I just left to build some confidence in me. I have pre-sales and I'm building something awesome. I'll be in the corner.
Yeah.
And I started just taking engineers to lunch like half of the day. And there were two that I started talking about like database design, and they were actually helping me figure out, how do I think about building this? Like, what languages would you do? I didn't know what I was doing. So I was learning through those interviewing processes. And I found a lot of great developers, but not what I would consider a true co-founder. They didn't have the business acumen. They didn't know how to think through some of like product market fit challenges or pivoting, but they could build. Yeah. But it wasn't what I wanted. I wanted a true co-founder.
Yeah, the actual tech co-founder, you take all the technology or coders and you actually get to a very small circle when you start saying what's needed in a technical co-founder versus a VP of engineering or a software developer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was interviewing people like crazy, not finding success. So I went to John and said, John, you have a network, and can you post this to your network? And John's like, Shane, I have so many founders who ask me for this. And we have all the Startup Ignition alumni. Like, if I'm posting this out to my network, like, other people are going to want the people who respond too. And it said, give me 48 hours. Give me 48 hours of exclusivity to win these people over. And then you can share it on the Startup Ignition, alumni portals and everything. He's like, okay. And so he made the post. There were, probably like a half dozen or so people who responded. My now co-founder, Mikey Murphy, was one of them who responded.
Yeah. And what happens is Mikey on the other side was saying, I've suddenly become free, and I get them ask me, what's a good business co-founder I could join his deal on?
Yeah.
And so,
Because wasn't Mikey doing a dev shop at the time, right?
No. So he was, he had built a company with his co-founder. They had gone through Techstars, but they had acquired a service-based business.
Yeah.
And it was like, I'm a tech guy and now a service-based company.
He's a quality guy, and he came to me, and at the same time, I said, I want to get, but he was picky, and he wanted to be with a business guy that he could trust and believe in with a great idea, right?
A good idea.
And so I'm kind of that kind of connector. And by the way, just as a side note, you should know that in our venture fund, we've done about 18 investments. About half of them, we've found the tech co-founder in the same way, because it works, right?
Yeah.
But what it is we're a connector. And it was just so fun when I said, I had to say to Mikey, and I hope this is okay, I share this and you keep telling your story, but I said, Mikey, I've actually got one of my favorite business entrepreneurs that have come through Startup Ignition who's actually looking for just like you right now. And then I went to you and said, hey, this is a really top guy.
Yeah.
So he's really good. And take it from there.
And so Mikey checked every single box of what I was looking for in a true technical co-founder. And I think we met mid-September at this point. So we're like a month and a half into validating and picking the idea. And so Mikey and I decided, hey, we're going to do this. Let's try out working together here for a little bit.
And just keeping it real too. He did it. He asked, because I had to vouch for you. Okay. And I had to vouch to you for him. And it's kind of interesting. And that's how these things come together. Just real. This is really important process, because this is the magic mix that makes things go.
Yeah. Like Boostly would not be successful if Shane and Mikey weren't the two people who built it.
Yeah.
Like if it was someone else that I had as my co-founder, I don't think Boostly would be where we are today.
And there's some serendipity, timing, et cetera.
Yeah.
And also you have to be easy to work with, So you two, are good guys who can find a way to work with other people. Yeah.
Yeah. And Mikey and I are very yin and yang. We think very differently about many, many things.
You don't want a clone of yourself.
And that was part of what I was looking for. I didn't want somebody who thought the same way as me. I wanted someone who would push and challenge, and Mikey had that capacity in spades.
And in a way that he was tuned into the business aspect of building, right? He wasn't just a product guy. He also thought about the strategic business side of what product building is. You know what I mean? Like he had both sides of the puzzle.
So when you got together, what happened? Magic?
So yeah, I mean, it was great. We were at the startup building. He was sitting across the table from me. I was making cold calls. He was, coding up some software.
A shout out to the startup building because they just did us a favor today. So startup building's in Provo, Utah, and it's an entire block basically dedicated to housing startups at the very early stages.
I officed next to you guys for 2 years.
That's where Tyler built Dev Mountain.
Yeah. And so from the time Mikey and I met to the time we actually incorporated the company, it was about a month. So mid-October, at that point, we officially signed incorporation documents, and that was when, okay, the company's real, and now we have to build something. And from mid-October to, I think, January 2nd, we launched our MVP live to customers.
Was it going more towards the Chow Now, or were you pivoting still? Where were you at?
At that point, it was Chow Now plus marketing and feedback tool.
I remember that.
Built
Okay,
in.
yeah.
And so that's what we launched, and I just kept selling people. Now I'm not selling people on a Mafia offer anymore. We have a live product. We can onboard them. And so
how long did it take from when Mikey and you incorporated, or Mikey seriously got hands on a keyboard, to where you actually got a product into the very first customer's hands?
It would have been 2.5 months.
Okay. So now we're towards the end of the year ish.
Yeah. So January
going
2nd,
into 2017.
Yeah, January 2nd, 2017. We launched to our pre-sold customers. We had about 12 of them at that point. And then every month I was just adding more people. We hired another cold caller so that I could do more demos while he's adding more.
Outbounding, yep.
And at night I'm onboarding customers. During the day I'm selling customers. And we were doing that with some small product pivots and iterations along the way for about a year from that point on. And then we had a realization. December 2017, we're like, guess what, guys? It was the day before Christmas. We're like, this isn't what we're gonna scale. This isn't it. We have 6 months of cash left. And we know we don't want to scale an online ordering company. We had hired a great salesperson. We thought we were ready to scale. And that great salesperson struggled to sell. And it was that founder magic that I was pushing this into the marketplace. I think we got the company to about 15 to 18K in monthly revenue.
You were doing what we call brute force sales.
Yes.
Because a founder can do brute force sales, but the key is the founder needs to get a non-founder actually selling a system. The founder says, hey, you non-founder, come sell this. And it works on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what we realized is the cold calling, very repeatable. The closing of customers was not as repeatable as I anticipated.
Yeah.
And it was not the salesperson. It was a product market fit challenge. And that was evidenced by, this is a great salesperson who's selling relatively similar to me. I'm having success in selling. He's not. And I can hear what he's saying, and I don't think it's a him problem.
Yeah.
I think it's an us problem. And so that means we have to pivot. We need to do something different. And so in January of 2018, we kept the online ordering customers going because it was bringing in, $200K in revenue per year, and that's helping us fund the company. And we were taking annual payments on 30% of our customers.
So you still haven't raised at this point. You haven't raised any funds. It was all customer funded revenue.
Yeah. So I funded the company, and then revenue was supplementing.
Mm-hmm.
And we kept doing that through the end of 2018. 2018, we decided, hey, what if we don't do the online ordering portion? We just focus on the marketing tools. Because we noticed customers were swapping out a good online ordering system for our bad online ordering system just to get the marketing tools.
Yeah.
And so we said, let's lean into the value proposition that people are buying and stop the online ordering. Let's see how we can pull data from all the other online ordering vendors and specialize in the marketing piece. And we validated that. Everything we ever validated, we've probably validated 8 different products through the years. All of them followed the same model. Pre-sell, take the hypothesis, pre-sell the thing until you get a lot of pre-sales, build it, and then keep testing the hypotheses. Can you retain the customers?
Yeah.
And if so, great, we're on to something.
Well, everything's a hypothesis until it is validated, whether that is an actual feature, whether that's a whole product suite, whether that's an assumption or strategy, everything's a hypothesis.
And then the key is to not spend a hoard of money in the validation process. Spend what you need to, but stay frugal until you nail it.
So what I'm finding interesting about your story too is the quickness and the accelerated process you've been going through. Like even your timelines of like, oh, I quit my job. A month later, I had something validated. A month later, I had met Mikey. A month later, we incorporated. A month later, we had version 1. 2 months later, we're collecting revenues. It's just like that's the speed I think you should be going at, but that's not very normal.
And by the way, this pivot history is so instructional for the listeners and the viewers of our podcast here. So that was a huge major pivot. Take us through the pivots and bring us to current day. I just don't want to run out of time today.
Yeah. So we pivoted at that point. Funny enough, we went to the International Pizza Expo with a bunch of slides and said, how's the customer response going to be, and how does it sell? Guess who the top salesperson at that trade show was?
You?
Mikey Murphy, my technical co-founder.
Really?
What?
And that was the moment when we're like, I think we're onto something.
Because Mikey's selling.
Mikey, the guy who's been sitting in a corner coding, like he just outsold everybody at this show on these slides. Like, okay, this feels more like product market fit. And then we realized, well, we have retention issues. We got to stop the selling, focus on retention. We doubled our revenue just by focusing on our customers. We're like, oh, this feels really good. And then fast forward to 2019. Now we have a repeatable sales process. Non-founders are able to sell it. This is going well. And we go into 2020 and it's like, this is our year. We're going to scale. Like
Q1 of 2020.
We've bootstrapped up to this point. We've raised no capital. And so 2018, 19, like it's just me and customers. And then March 18th happened. Mm-hmm. Restaurants shut down across the country with the pandemic.
You remember the date.
Oh, it was a sad day.
Black day.
We were like, okay, we have to face reality. We are likely to go out of business.
Yeah.
And we had to go and explore all of those dark moments and say, okay, we might go out of business. What do we do to enforce contracts, keep revenue coming in? And so what do? Validate additional products that in this period can help restaurants. So we validated like a restaurant on subscription. We validated an HR benefit for remote employees. We validated a catering marketplace for business catering and remote worker catering. And it was the same thing. Pre-sell, build it, validate, iterate, change product, pre-sell. Okay, this is sticking. This isn't. We did that for 4 or 5 different products during 2020. And we felt, hey, we have this catering marketplace that is getting a decent amount of traction. And then at the end of 2020, we had customers saying from our old pre-COVID pipeline, hey, we're ready. We think we're ready to sign up. What do we have to do to get started with your text marketing product?
Yeah.
We're like, oh, that's interesting. And our customers started telling us, hey, we're ready to expand locations again. Like, oh, okay. I think the buying appetite is here. It's 2021. Let's do a full restart with a new pricing model, let's scope down our product and make it a more narrow focused product. And then we restarted outbound sales, and it was clicking, and it was like things were growing, and that felt great. And so 2022, middle of the year, we went through Y Combinator and just kept growing.
And that was through Y Combinator based on the latest pivot you made to that product?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Can you just 30 seconds, that product, describe it again, exactly what it did?
So it was essentially SMS marketing for restaurants where we would pull customer data from their point of sale and online ordering system. We had a process to turn those people into opted-in SMS marketing subscribers, and then we would essentially mass market.
And text has such a high read and open rate compared to email that you just killed it.
Correct. Yeah. And so that was working. People were paying for it, and it seemed like we could scale this. Mm-hmm. And so we went through Y Combinator. We went from beginning of the year, we were doing probably 45,000 in monthly revenue at that
Mm-hmm.
point. When we got into Y Combinator at the end of the year, we were doing $100,000 in monthly revenue. And then we raised a little bit of capital at the end of Y Combinator. That was our first external money into the business.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the next year we went to $200K in monthly revenue.
Wow.
And then the start of 2020.
Any pivots, or is it just on this latest model?
The latest micro pivots.
Micro pivots. Okay.
Yeah.
Small iterations, but
still the base, the genesis of it is
Yeah.
marketing tools for restaurants.
Yeah, leveraging the data that
They already have.
that
they're getting themselves.
and turn that into a marketing machine.
Okay. Awesome.
And so that's what we were doing. And at that point, we're like, okay, we're actually starting to scale. Middle of 2024, we closed a seed round of capital.
I remember that conversation that we had.
Yep. Yeah. So at the end of YC, I think we had our first conversation. We raised like 1.8 million
Mm-hmm.
at that point. And then middle of 2024, we raised an additional 3.8 million.
Who led all these rounds? Like the 1 point?
There was no clear lead.
No, that was just
in YC.
That was like
It was just a bunch of investors
jumping
coming
onto
together.
it, and
Yep.
okay. And then who led the second round?
The 3 million.
Trestle Partners.
Okay.
They're out of New York.
Happy with them?
Yeah, they're awesome.
Great.
And we actually got introduced to them by PeakSpan Capital, who ended up leading our Series A.
The recent one,
Yeah. So this all
the
happened.
$22 million one.
Yeah, this all happened pretty fast. So in May, beginning of the year of 2024, we went out to raise a seed round, and we closed that in May. One of the investors we talked to at that point was PeakSpan,
Mm-hmm.
and they said, "Hey, you're raising $3 million right now. We invest a lot more, and we're more Series A. You're too early for us.
Yeah.
But we know an investor who would love you."
Yeah.
Trestle. They made an introduction to Trestle. 2 weeks later, they led our seed round, and we closed in May.
What's the size of Trestle? What average check size are they cutting? And what they're doing seed rounds specifically?
Yeah, they're doing seed round. They play in the space of companies that are kind of between a traditional seed and Series A.
Yeah.
Where
I call it late stage seed.
A later stage.
Late
Yeah.
stage seed. Yeah.
Because in Utah, the round sizes and valuations are just so different than the coast. Or
Yes.
maybe it's better to say the coasts are so different than almost everywhere else, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
New York
Yeah.
or Silicon Valley, they're just
But what
they're
an
large.
accomplishment and what a compliment to your company building skills that you've got on this path. So, what were the month and year for, okay. So the 3 point, how much was it?
3.8 million.
And that was from Trestle.
Yep.
And that was what month and year?
2024.
Yeah,
May?
mid 2024, May of 24 is when we closed the
Okay.
round. We were doing a little over 3 million in revenue.
ARR.
In annual revenue. And that's about the stage where they tend to invest.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
at about 2 to 3 million. You have good growth, you're efficient, and they generally invest a $3 million.
What a great deal.
check.
PeakSpan was able to, with their referral of Trestle, they were able to watch you all that time. And all good news was coming out. And then they just did this great deal.
Yeah, and so fast forward 3 months after that, PeakSpan reaches out and says, "Hey, we have interest. We think that you're at the stage now that we have interest in investing. Would you consider it?" We said, "We have a great balance sheet. Like we're not going to raise money for another 18 months.
Yeah.
We just barely raised." And then 2 weeks later, they reached out and said, we know you aren't raising. If we put together like a term sheet, like we're really serious about this, would you consider it? And at that point, it was like, I know those are the investors that I want. And let's see what happens. And so, late October, we start talking. They start doing some diligence, and we sign a term sheet. And then end of January of 2025, we closed the round.
So they basically gave you a deal that you couldn't refuse. Is that what it boils down to? Or did you just want to work with them and knew you wanted them, that you were like, okay, I'm going to almost prematurely raise this round? Because you said you had 18 months of runway.
Yeah.
And kind of shooed them away at the beginning.
Yeah. It was a preemptive Series A for sure.
Yeah.
And so when they came back and said, hey, we're really serious about this, let's have a couple of conversations, and then we think we could issue a term sheet. At that point, I said, I'm going to run a quick process, and I'm going to line up a bunch of Series A investors. I have a short list of people that I talked to this last round, and I talked to like 10 different investors. But as I'm talking to them all, I realized Trestle or PeakSpan, they are the investors that I want. I align the best with them and how they think about company building. They value efficiency in the business and not just running
Rampant.
burn through the roof. And I have high trust in them. They understand our business in ways other investors don't. There's just a lot of alignment, and they definitely structured the deal in an interesting way where it made sense for us to do it now.
All right. We've only got a few minutes left. Can you believe it? We're only down to a few minutes. So this is fantastic. Just congratulations. Let me ask you this. Okay, let's go back to the beginning now. So you and Catherine come to our boot camp.
Yep.
Not sure if you're going to do a startup or what's going on, right? And I just want to know, sitting here today, because I kind of take a little credit for corrupting you from going from working for the man to being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Are you happy? Are you loving life? I mean, you and Catherine, how you doing? Everything good?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, life is great. We're super, super blessed. And like, I'm absolutely grateful for this journey. I think this has been like a extremely meaningful experience for me to grow and develop and become more than what I was when this started. And I wouldn't change it.
Well, this is one of the reasons we wanted you as one of our first guests too, not just because of this event, but that just happened to you in business, but also you are just a great guy who also quickly assimilated important information on how to do a startup right and went through all the process and did it correctly, and look at the outcome.
Yeah. And I think you align so much with our methodologies, right? The way that we attack and approach business as well. And obviously because you came through the boot camp and, probably, really, really aligned with our curriculum, and we're like, oh yeah, that is what I'm doing. Or, oh yeah, that is what I should be doing. And
he made it his own and built on top of it.
Yeah.
And you've just what you've shared today is so valuable. I hope all of you entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs are listening. This is a great example of entrepreneurship.
Yeah. So maybe to wrap it up, I don't know, is there any other parting wisdom that you could maybe share with our audience? That's
like, what's a top tip or two you'd give us?
It's not every day that you run across an entrepreneur who's raised as much capital as you has. And
built such a great business.
But I know that capital and fundraising is not the end all be all. Right?
And we teach
There's
that,
still a massive exit strategy that needs to go into play here, right? Otherwise, your investors are going to be very upset with you, right? We have $25 million at play here, right?
Yeah.
So, but fundraising, as much as it's not a sign of success, there's obviously a lot of smart people around you and believing in you and seeing something that is working correctly. So what are maybe some strategies, tips, or advice that you would give around fundraising, but also around just building and growing true, real business?
Like what, think about when it was just you and then you got Mikey in and just a couple, 2, 3, 4 people. What's the number one tip if you had just 30 seconds, say, here's the most important thing I learned of what I needed to do or how to go forward?
You're right.
Yeah. I know it's a put you on the spot. What's something you'd share?
Yeah. So I'll mix a couple things together. Fundraising, like people talk about fundraising all the time. that'll take care of itself if you build a good business.
Right.
Excellent.
Build
comment, yeah.
a good business that works, like that the customers want to pay for, and that
it's healthy.
that can be a healthy business.
Yep.
Fundraising will take care of itself. at that point.
You by doing that, you put yourself in the driver's seat too. Yeah.
The other side of it is like surrounding yourself with amazing people who can build with you is the secret. You get that with a co-founder, and you have to be scrappy in the early days. And early on, you're bringing on employees who are scrappy by nature. I think we took a really long time to hire higher level people. And the moment we did, it changed the business.
Yeah.
And so surrounding yourself with really amazing people who will build with you is crucial to that.
Awesome. We are actually over time. So, Mr. Moderator, you need to wrap it up too.
Well, we are, but Shane just has so much stuff that I feel like our listeners will love. But yes, we're going to have to wrap this up. But Shane, thank you so much for joining us. Your story is amazing. There's so many tidbits of information in there that I feel like really pertain to the average entrepreneur. I hope we can stay up to date on the new news that happens moving forward with Boostly. And by the way, I don't think we ever said, so what Boostly's been around for how long now? It's not a yesterday company. People need to realize this.
No, this is,
2017, right?
Yeah, late 2017. So
this is an 8-year-old
Yeah.
company, okay? Because a lot of people think
Yeah, but he was in an industry that absolutely lambasted for 2 or 3 years.
COVID took a piece.
And
Yeah.
what a compliment that he's sitting
Weathering
here
the
today.
storm,
it's
right?
and just I want to conclude by this, Mr. Moderator. I'm going to say this maybe as a conclusion. Shane, you're truly, sincerely, you're a good guy. But all this other stuff, that doesn't count nearly as much as just you're a great guy to be around, and you're just a sincerely good person.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
we'll wrap it up. Shane's story is obviously proof that success comes from solving real world problems, not just fundraising. That comes afterwards. But thank you for joining in. This is the Startup Ignition podcast. We're going to call it a day today. Join us for the next episode. Thank you for listening. Like, share, subscribe, tell your entrepreneurial friends we're here. Send us a message. We're here for you guys. We love to share advice, give mentorship wherever we can. And thank you for joining us. And that's it. And thank you, Shane, for coming on.
happy to be here. Thanks.
Great.
Rap, like all in that.